So you thought you knew everything about High on Life 2, right? That after watching all the trailers, reading all the news, and having played the first one, you were prepared. Well, I thought so too, until I actually started exploring this crazy game. So grab your favorite weapon, get comfortable, and come with me to discover these secrets that the game doesn't scream in your face, but that make all the difference in the experience.
Creation. We live lives on a small screen nation. We control the airwaves, no negotiation. I refuse to think we need saving. Something good will come from...
What caught my attention most in High on Life 2 was the decision to treat the skateboard not as an extra toy, but as the default way to move. Instead of that old sprint button that every game puts almost on autopilot, here it feels like the game was born thinking you're always going to be fast, always sliding, always with momentum. And this completely changes the rhythm of combat, exploration, and even how you read the environment while playing. Technically, this is a much bolder leap than it seems at first glance, because constant speed is unforgiving. If the map were designed like in the first game, you'd cross everything too fast, break the timing of the jokes, run over encounters, and arrive at places before the game is ready for you. So the idea of rebuilding the level design makes total sense. It's not just about putting a board on the character, it's about remaking distances, curves, visibility, breathing areas, and points of interest so that the fast flow feels natural and doesn't look like you're playing a mod. And then comes the part I think is coolest, the magnetic surfaces for grinds and wall runs. This is the kind of mechanic that, when well implemented, transforms the setting into a movement playground. Instead of just going from point A to point B, you start looking for lines, corners, eye-catching walls, and the game becomes almost a momentum puzzle. Where do I gain speed? Where do I keep it? Where do I risk a wall run to take a shortcut or reach a secret? The detail that this didn't exist in the first game's engine also tells me a lot about the project's ambition. It's not just a sequel with more talking guns and more jokes, it's a repositioning of the gameplay's foundation. If they nail the feel of the skate, weight, response, grip, and air control, this could be the kind of change that makes us remember High on Life 2, not just for the humor, but for that addictive movement that makes you want to keep riding just one more minute around the map. High on Life 2 arrives as one of the first games to bet on NVIDIA's DLSS 4 with support for multi-frame generation. And this isn't just a marketing checkbox, it's part of the game's performance plan. What this tells me, in practice, is that the team is aiming heavily for a 4K experience with a high frame rate, because the very idea is to manufacture extra frames with AI to maintain fluidity when the scene gets absurdly heavy. And I can imagine exactly why. Sequels usually want to show off, so you increase object density, fill the screen with effects and particles on new planets, and suddenly the game becomes that beautiful chaos that, without a little help from upscaling and frame generation, would drop the FPS rate easily. This is especially relevant for those who plan to play near the beefier recommendations, like an RTX 4080 or higher, because the message is clear. If you want stable 4K the way we imagined it, DLSS 4 with multi-frame generation is a key part of the package. This change in structure in High on Life 2 is very interesting because the first game was basically linear with a central hub house, and now they've decided to fully embrace the idea of Metroidvania-style hubs with 3 large interconnected areas, and the largest of them is the planet's Circuit Arcadia, which even has rings around it. What this means in practice is that you won't just pass straight through the stages. The game was designed for you to go back, revisit old places with new abilities, and unlock areas that were previously blocked. This expands vertical and horizontal exploration, which is exactly the heart of a good Metroidvania. That feeling of, now that I have this new power, I'm going back to that corner I saw earlier. Technically, they used a layered loading system to make this work without making the game too heavy. So instead of having the entire map loaded all the time, it assembles the areas as you move, which is smart because it allows for larger and denser worlds without exploding memory usage. To me, this is one of the most exciting curiosities of the game because it shows they listened to those who wanted more depth in exploration. It's not just go to the next planet and kill the boss. Now there's a reward for going back, for exploring calmly, for looking for hidden secrets. It's a very ambitious step for a sequel that could have played it safe. High on Life 2 asking for 115 gigabytes gives me that classic scare. I look at the number and immediately start mentally cleaning my SSD, choosing which game is going to be fired to make room. The most curious thing is that this size doesn't seem like just exaggeration for exaggeration's sake, but rather a sign of technical and content ambition. If the largest slice of this really comes from high-resolution textures for Circuit Arcadia, I totally understand why. A more detailed world is beautiful, but it's expensive in storage. And when a game bets heavily on large environments full of visual information, that's exactly where textures weigh in and become the silent villain of disk space. Now, the part I find most fun is this idea of fully functional games within the game, running simultaneously in separate engine instances. This suggests it's not just a simple minigame, it's real side content. And that kind of thing usually carries its own assets, sounds, interfaces, and rules, so the number starts to make more sense. I read these 115 gigabytes as a choice. They want High on Life 2 to feel fuller, denser, and more modern, even if it charges a storage toll. And when you combine that with the fact that the game is aiming for very advanced PC features like DLSS 4, you can feel that the priority here is scale and impact, not lightness. This real-time environment curvature thing is one of those technical features that makes you stop your character just to stare at the horizon. We're used to skyboxes, those static images pasted in the background of the setting that pretend to be the sky or distant mountains. But here, Squanch Games decided to render the ringed planet, the aforementioned Circuit Arcadia, as actual geometry passing over your head. What gets me about this curiosity is the sense of scale it creates. Knowing that what I'm seeing way up there isn't a painting, but a real 3D model that exists in the same space as my character gives a very specific sense of vertigo, like that feeling of grandeur we felt in the first Halo games, but now with much more robust technology behind it. And it's not just eye candy visual, because this directly affects the visual gameplay. Since the curvature is a physical object, it interferes with global illumination and shadows. Depending on where you are in the hub, the structure of the ring up there can block light or cast dynamic shadows on the ground where you walk, which makes the lighting feel much more alive and less artificial. To me, this is the kind of detail that shows the developers care for immersion. They could have saved processing power by using a fake background, and most wouldn't even notice, but they chose to simulate light physics and planetary geometry to ensure you truly feel tiny inside this strange alien world. This is one of those quality of life improvements that we didn't even know we needed so much until seeing it in practice. The new dialogue system now features a dynamic equipment swap that is simply brilliant for the fluidity it brings. You know that annoying situation where you want to hear a specific weapon's opinion, but you're wielding another one and you miss the timing of the joke? The game solved this in a very elegant way. The magic happens right in the interface. The response options now appear explicitly linked to your Gatlians. If you choose a line from a weapon that happens to be stored in your inventory or holster, the game engine performs an automatic and instantaneous swap of the 3D model. The weapon jumps into your hand immediately, delivers the line, and stays ready, without you needing to press any extra buttons. What I liked most about this is how it completely eliminates that mechanical friction of having to pause the conversation or desperately spin the weapon selection wheel just to interact with a specific NPC. Before, the swap weapon mechanic was purely functional for combat, but now it has become an integral part of the narrative. The flow becomes much more organic because you stop managing inventory and start focusing only on choosing who will give the funniest or most aggressive answer. To me, this reinforces the idea that the weapons in this game aren't just shooting tools. They are, in practice, your teammates, like an RPG party. Seeing this transition happen smoothly on screen gives a great sense of technical polish and ensures immersion high, ensuring the comedy timing, which is the soul of the franchise, is never broken by a clunky selection mechanic. This one is going to hit home for anyone who enjoys that organized chaos of classic FPS, the akimbo synergy between Travis and Jan. It's the first time the series has implemented a real cooperation mechanic between weapons, and the execution is very stylish. You find these two handguns at different times, and they occupy distinct spaces in your inventory. But the magic happens when you finally reunite the duo and unlock the combined firing mode. What caught my attention is that it's not just a visual matter of having two guns on screen. Technically, the game alters the projectile spread parameters when you enter this mode. You trade pinpoint accuracy for a much larger damage area, basically creating a wall of bullets in front of you. It's that feeling of raw power that was a bit lacking in the first game, perfect for controlling crowds of smaller enemies trying to surround you. But the kicker lies in the complexity this brings to your resource management. Since the reload and overheat systems still apply, you now have to keep an eye on two simultaneous cooldown times. This requires a different rhythm. If you simply hold both triggers to the end, you'll be left vulnerable with two jammed weapons at the same time. The secret to keeping DPS at maximum is learning to alternate or cycle the shots. I think this addition is fantastic because it takes combat off autopilot. Instead of just pointing and shooting, you need to have an almost musical cadence to make the akimbo worth it. It's a layer of mechanical depth that shows how the sequel is concerned with being a competent shooter and not just a comedy game, rewarding those who dedicate time to mastering the rhythm of the weapons.
God, this parking lot is crazy! This parking lot is You did it! The spot's clear. Let me just get in there and...
Thanks for the spot, friend.
God damn it!